10 years ago, due to an accident, my first love slowly turned bad because of her paranoia. She distanced herself from me and got together with a thug. She learned to smoke, drink, and fight. Even made compromising videos with him, which shocked the entire school. Finally, she paid the price for her actions. That night, a group of people surrounded her. I saved her, but suffered severe injuries myself. Later, I went abroad and never saw her again. 10 years later, we reunited at a mutual friend's wedding. She cried and told me, "Do you know I've searched for you for 10 years? I returned to the country to attend the wedding of my old brother Li Fei. What I didn't expect was that Zhou Mian would be here too, dressed in a pristine white gown, sitting among the crowd. Though not the protagonist, all eyes were drawn to her. After 10 years, she had grown even more mature and captivating. Bro, you're not also into goddess Zhou Mian, are you? She's a female CEO, a talented woman from Peking University, beautiful and wealthy, the dream lover of many. I heard people go to her frequent spots every day to block her, trying to win her favor in various ways. But I heard goddess Zhou Mian already has someone in her heart. All these years she's been searching for someone. Who's that lucky man to gain the goddess's favor? People nearby whispered while looking at Zhou Mian. I froze, memories of the past flooding back. During senior year of high school on her birthday, we envisioned our future together, discussing everything from college to marriage. Just as I was about to confess, we each received a phone call and desperately rushed to the hospital. These painful memories suddenly surged into my mind. At this moment, Li Fei's voice interrupted my recollection. He poured me a drink. How Ge Mian is here too. She's been searching for you all these years. Before he finished speaking, Zhou Mian walked over. Chen Hao, is that you? I knew you weren't dead. She reached out, her trembling fingertips brushing toward my face, which I dodged. I politely greeted. Hello, Miss Zhou, long time no see. Zhou Mian stared at me in disbelief. What did you call me? I'm your Mian. Don't you remember? I looked at Li Fei. Sorry, I have matters to attend to. I'll take my leave now. Then I turned and walked around Zhou Mian, exiting the wedding venue. Zhou Mian was my first love. We grew up together since childhood. When we were children playing house, she always liked to pretend to be my wife. Later when we grew older and stopped playing such games, she still clung to me. We played video games together, studied together, our eyes only for each other. The adults often joked that we'd surely become an exceptionally happy couple if we ended up together. After entering middle school, Zhou Mian grew increasingly beautiful. Combined with her already outstanding academic performance, she naturally drew considerable attention from boys. Her desk was always covered with various flowers and love letters, but she threw them all away, and she did it deliberately in front of me. I chuckled. So many love letters. Aren't you going to read them? What if your ideal type is among them? Missing out would be a shame. Zhou Mian said earnestly. I only like wood. Couldn't possibly miss it. Wood, you big dummy. Zhou Mian yelled embarrassedly and ran off with a flushed face. I stood dazed for a long time before finally catching her meaning. There was only a thin layer of window paper left between me and Zhou Mian. She was waiting for me to take the initiative to pierce through it someday. And I too had been waiting for the right opportunity. We continued maintaining our relationship as before since then. Our academic performance remained excellent through senior high school. Until 12th grade, neither of us ever dropped out of the top 10 in our grade, rankings that were more than enough to get into prestigious 985 universities. With good performance on the college entrance exams, even Tsinghua or Peking University seemed within reach. If things had developed normally, we would have lived happily ever after. But an accident happened on her birthday during 12th grade. The call we received that day was about our fathers being involved in a car accident. Zhou Mian's father unfortunately passed away, while my dad survived. Because my father happened to exchange seats with Zhou Mian's father midway, moving to the back row, he serendipitously avoided the fatal collision, though still required months of hospitalization to recover. Zhou Mian couldn't accept this reality, refusing to believe it was an accident. She became convinced that my father was responsible for her dad's death, directing bitter resentment toward our entire family. She protested fiercely at the police station, yet received only official confirmation of accidental causation. But she still refused to believe it, stubbornly convinced that my father had caused her dad's death. She smashed the music box I gave her right in front of me. I hate you all. Your father is the murderer, and you're all his accomplices. My heart ached, and I didn't know how to comfort her. After that incident, Zhou Mian changed completely. She never voluntarily spoke another word to me, started skipping classes, and her grades plummeted straight down, falling below 50th place in the next exam. Finally, I couldn't hold back and confronted her. Do you even realize what you're doing? You're going to ruin yourself if this continues. You think you're who to me? My father? My dad's gone. From now on, nobody can control me anymore. Zhou Mian threw these words at me and walked away. I didn't know how to convince her. Days later, I heard Zhou Mian got Toget. Her with Song Ming. a school delinquent known for smoking, fighting, and womanizing. Every pretty girl at school had been harassed by him, making him notorious. To pick up girls, he even worked out at the gym specifically, often stripping off his shirt on the basketball court to show off his 8-pack abs, attracting female attention. Delinquents were naturally objects of disdain for all teachers, which he couldn't care less about. Many teachers had been driven to frustration, refusing to even enter his classroom. Those young and pretty female teachers would tremble at the sound of his name. Once a new female teacher was cornered in the classroom and harassed by him all afternoon, frightening her so much she didn't dare come back the next day. Song Ming had his parents called over for this incident, but such matters were trivial in his eyes. He had previously written love letters to Zhou Mian several times, but gave up after repeated rejections. Never did we expect Zhou Mian would end up getting involved with him. One was an academically outstanding good girl, the other a idle delinquent loitering all day. Their association was truly unfathomable. That day after school, Song Ming walked over with his arm draped around Zhou Mian's shoulder. This was my first time seeing Song Ming in person. Though notorious, one couldn't deny his striking good looks. But what baffled me was how Zhou Mian, who clearly used to dislike him, could undergo such an abrupt change. Song Ming asked, "Heard you used to pester my girlfriend constantly." Girlfriend? The word felt jarring to me. I had thought that this term was exclusively mine to call her, yet now I heard it from someone else's mouth, leaving me deeply unsettled inside. I glanced at Zhou Mian, who flashed a smile and leaned into Song Ming, appearing utterly intimate. I looked at Zhou Mian. Is what he said true? Zhou Mian nodded. Right. I suddenly realized Song Ming is exactly my type. But you never. Before I could finish, Zhou Mian continued. People change. I warned her. If you genuinely like him, I've nothing to say. But I won't stand you deliberately degrading yourself. Song Ming threatened. You asking for a beating? How's being with me degrading? I came to warn you. Stay away from my girlfriend from now on. Zhou Mian linked arms with him, ready to leave. As she passed by me, she whispered, Don't tell my mom about this. You're dead if you do. After that, Zhou Mian became increasingly rebellious. Once the teacher's favorite student, she now faced growing disdain from them. She began chatting freely during class without restraint, talking back to teachers, and fighting with others. She frequently skipped classes to hang out with Song Ming, returning reeking of alcohol. Since her father's accident, Zhou Mian's personality changed drastically. Mrs. Zhou questioned her, but she wouldn't say anything, often staying out overnight while claiming she was tutoring a classmate. At first, Mrs. Zhou thought nothing of it, but Zhou Mian's plummeting exam scores, previously stable, made her realize something was wrong. Such a drastic drop couldn't happen without reason. Zhou Mian had been closest to her father before his passing. Now, unsure how to communicate with her daughter, Mrs. Zhou came to me for answers. Seeing Mrs. Zhou's anxious expression, I had to reveal everything Zhou Mian had done recently. Mrs. Zhou was stunned after hearing this, utterly unable to believe her daughter could do such things. Mrs. Zhou wanted to have a direct conversation with her and hoped I could bring her home. However, Mrs. Zhou didn't realize that she now hated our family the most. Seeing the hopeful look in Mrs. Zhou's eyes, I could only promise to try my best. Mrs. Zhou left my house in tears, as successive family tragedies had taken a heavy toll on her. How did Mian Mian turn out like this? She used to be so sweet. My mother also felt heartbroken. She had watched Zhou Mian grow up, and even considered her a future daughter-in-law. Never did she expect such changes. I shook my head. Zhou Mian had already convinced herself that my father caused her dad's death. This belief had become an obsession. I knew reasoning with her was futile, but remembering her mother's anguished expression, I still went to find her. This was my first time coming to a bar. Pulsing music blasted through every corner, with men and women writhing on the dance floor. I spotted Zhou Mian immediately. She wore a crop top with black fishnet stockings and a short skirt, her makeup heavy while sporting black lipstick and waving her heavily tattooed arms. No one would believe this was a student unless they'd known her before. Song Ming clung to her side, his hands wandering over her body as they danced. I walked over and pulled Zhou Mian away. Zhou Mian demanded, What are you doing here? Don't bother me. How much longer will you keep acting crazy? She ignored me, continuing to sway her hips. I stated bluntly, Your mother knows everything. She's devastated. Go talk to her. Are you trying to die? Who told you to tell her? Zhou Mian jabbed her finger angrily at me. I countered, Now you care about shame? Then why did you do those things in the first place? So what if she found out? I just had a shred of conscience left, didn't want to upset her. Might as well lay it out. I'm done acting like the perfect daughter. Zhou Mian blew a smoke ring at me, utterly unfazed as she took another drag. I pressed on. Whatever your reasons, she's still your mother. Go talk to her. She shoved Song Ming forward. Fine. If you can outdrink my boyfriend, I'll humor you. Song Ming glanced at me disdainfully and chugged a beer bottle straight away. My first time drinking. The whole bottle low. Ft me nauseous. Surprised, Song Ming kept drinking. We pushed each other to the brink until he finally collapsed into the restroom. Pathetic loser. Zhou Mian cursed fiercely, never expecting Song Ming would lose a drinking match to me. I won. Clenching my churning stomach, I staggered out of the bar. I thought Zhou Mian would restrain herself after talking with her mother this time, but their relationship deteriorated even more. That night, after a fierce argument, Zhou Mian stormed out again. When I went to school the next day, I heard shocking news. A video was spreading like wildfire across the campus, and soon I saw it too. It was an explicit video featuring Zhou Mian and Song Ming as the leads. While their private parts remained covered, everything that was supposed to be shown was shown. That figure. No wonder she's the campus belle. I didn't even blink my eyes. My goddess isn't pure anymore. I'm shattered. Who knew the goddess would stoop to someone like Song Ming? Has the world's taste changed this much? Every school group chat buzzed about the incident. The incident blew up so severely that the school immediately banned video sharing to contain the fallout, then notified their parents. Zhou Mian and Song Ming arrived at school early in the morning, holding hands intimately. Song Ming looked at me triumphantly. Chen Hao, you seem furious. Are you jealous of me? You're overthinking. I won't like a girl with no self-respect. If before I had still hoped to reconcile with Zhou Mian, I gave up completely after this incident. Song Ming sneered. Keep pretending. Everyone knows you like Zhou Mian, yet she ended up in my bed. What's the use of good grades? You couldn't even keep the girl you liked. Maybe you should rewatch her video to cope. He kissed Zhou Mian's cheek. Did you enjoy last night? Let's continue tonight. Zhou Mian buried her face in his arms, appearing bashful. Soon, classmates came to inform them to report to the principal's office. Let's go. We'll have some tea at the office first. Song Ming remained unfazed. He'd been there many times. One more visit meant nothing. His father didn't show up. That man spent all day drinking and gambling outside, utterly indifferent to his son. As soon as Song Ming entered the room, he actually went to pour tea. The school administrators could do nothing about him. He was utterly unmanageable. The school had considered expelling him before. When they brought it up with his father last time, Song Ming still came to class normally the next day as if nothing had happened. Song Ming's father even brought people to cause daily disturbances at school, claiming the institution wanted to ruin Song Ming's reputation. How can he survive society if expelled with that mark? He argued. The school could only endure it temporarily, since Song Ming was old graduate soon anyway. He took a sip of tea and leisurely sat down. Just one video? My hand slipped and accidentally sent it out. Was all this fuss really necessary? Besides, I'm the one who got exposed. If I don't mind, why should you care? The school administrators were speechless. There's just no way to communicate with someone like Song Ming. Meanwhile, Zhou Mian's mother arrived at the school. She'd already learned about the incident beforehand, crying nonstop on her way here. She was so furious, she almost fainted. Mian Mian, what's wrong with you? Why have you become like this? Mother Zhou asked painfully. Song Ming snapped. What do you mean by that, old woman? Is Mian Mian suffering some great loss by being with me? When Mother Zhou saw Song Ming, she slapped him. You ruined my daughter. I'll kill you. However, a middle-aged woman was no match for Song Ming. Song Ming grabbed her hand and shoved hard, knocking her to the ground. Old hag, trying to hit me. Zhou Mian stood motionless as she watched her mother being bullied. I couldn't bear it anymore from outside, rushed in and punched Song Ming, wrestling with him. Teachers immediately separated us upon seeing this, then kicked us all out. Mother Zhou walked over shaking Zhou Mian's shoulders. Mian Mian, you've become a stranger to me now. Zhou Mian said coldly. I like who I am now, doing whatever I want. What's wrong with that? Mother Zhou cried out. If your father knew you'd become like this, how heartbroken he'd be. How dare you mention Dad? Dad was killed by that family, yet you still stay so close to them. Make Chun Hao's father pay with his life. What do you know besides crying? After a pause, she continued. Dad promised to buy me Lego for my birthday, but I'll never receive that gift now. He can never take me to amusement parks again, nor make breakfast for me every morning. Zhou Mian was emotional, crying bitterly. She had been closest to her father, but now she had lost him forever. That's not true. Your father's death was just an accident. Mrs. Zhou tried to explain further, but was interrupted by Zhou Mian covering her ears and shaking her head tearfully. I won't listen. My dad was killed by their family. With that, she ran out of the office. Just when everyone thought the matter was concluded, someone posted that video online, and it quickly became a trending topic. Zhou Mian's personal information quickly got exposed online. Netizens flooded the comments section with insults, some even claiming she was just an attention seeker trying to boost her social value through controversy. Everyone had something to say, yet no one spoke kindly. Amidst this torrent of abuse, Zhou Mian suddenly posted an open letter. The gist of it explained that she'd become this way because her father was murdered, and with no one helping seek justice. Tice, she'd spiraled into self-destruction. This Weibo post soon trended again. Netizens began offering condolences to her, while my father became the new target of online attacks. My father, who'd just started walking again after months bedridden, was so enraged by these developments that he took to his bed for several more days. His phone kept buzzing daily with hate messages. Even when Mom and I went out, people would point at us and whisper. I'd only ever heard about cyberbullying before. Experiencing it firsthand, that pain cuts deeper than words can tell. My mother held me and cried bitterly. Why does our family have to bear these unjust accusations? As the incident blew up, the Public Security Department soon released investigation results online confirming it was indeed an accident. I don't believe this conclusion. Since the matter has been officially determined, I can only resign myself to fate. Those who destroy others' families will surely face retribution. Zhou Mian posted another lengthy social media essay, completely swaying online sentiment, with many still believing her narrative. My father developed depression over this. Though aware of his innocence, the constant accusations made him doubt whether he really bore responsibility. He also agonized over Zhou Mian's downfall, a child he'd watched grow up. With college entrance exams approaching, Zhou Mian continued playing the delinquent girl role. Many sympathized with her while redirecting blame onto our family. Classmates started ostracizing me at school. My desk was often littered with trash. I could only secretly think that once the college entrance exams were over, everything would naturally get better. As for Zhou Mian and me, we had become two parallel lines that would never intersect again. Yet sometimes life is full of dramatic twists. That night after self-study class, I spotted Zhou Mian from afar being cornered by a group at the school gate. The reason was that Song Ming's gangster big brother from outside had watched their bedroom video and taken a fancy to Zhou Mian. Zhou Mian's tragic situation was completely ignored by him. After all, Zhou Mian was Song Ming's girlfriend. All the gang members' girlfriends had been passed around by him. So that night, he ordered Song Ming to deliver Zhou Mian to him and his brothers for fun. Zhou Mian naturally refused, but there was no escape from so many men. This was the first time she'd encountered such a scene, utterly terrified and shivering in the corner. Mingji, this girl's really hot. Can't believe you beat me to her. That video was so wild. Her curvy body haunted my dreams all night after watching. The thugs around Song Ming looked at Zhou Mian as if she were a fish on a chopping board waiting to be slaughtered. Song Ming was naturally unwilling, but he dared not offend his gang leader, so he had to hand Zhou Mian over. In their gangster circle, women were just playthings. No real emotions existed. Seeing Zhou Mian's pitiful demeanor, Song Ming snapped impatiently. Stop pretending to be innocent. You were so wild when I had you that night. Now you'll just endure a dozen men. Hold on, and it'll be over. Fear flooded Zhou Mian's eyes. Only now did she realize the magnitude of trouble her actions had caused. When I saw Zhou Mian surrounded, I instinctively wanted to leave. But in the end, I couldn't stand by indifferently. Grabbing a wooden stick, I charged at them. I pulled Zhou Mian and ran toward the exit. Recognizing me, Song Ming flew into a rage and immediately led his crew in pursuit. Shielding Zhou Mian behind me, I brawled with the gang. There were too many of them, so naturally I was no match. My body was soon covered in blood, with not a single intact spot left on me. With my last bit of strength, I said to her, "Run." Zhou Mian shook her head. "Chen Hao, why are you so foolish?" I wiped the blood from my lips. "When we were children, I said I would protect you when I grew up. I kept my promise. And about wanting my father's life in return, I'll give you this life of mine. But please restore my father's good name." I pushed Zhou Mian out forcefully, using my body to block those chasing after us. Only when her figure disappeared from my sight did I finally breathe a sigh of relief. I collapsed on the ground, but didn't die. The police arrived just in time. I'd secretly called them when Zhou Mian was first surrounded. When Mom saw me covered in blood at the hospital, she burst into tears. Dad kept comforting her by her side. Mom cried brokenheartedly. What did our family do wrong? Why does the suffering always fall on us? My injuries are severe. The doctor said it will take at least 6 months to fully recover. My father was already deeply traumatized by that incident before. Now, with this happening to me, we decided to leave this place of sorrow and move abroad for a fresh start. The painful memories once filled my mind completely. Now, a decade later, seeing Zhou Mian again doesn't bring the same agony it once did. Mr. Chun, these are the client materials for tomorrow's meeting. My assistant Jiang Ying handed me a document. Aside from attending Li Fei's wedding, this return home also involved several business negotiations. I opened the file and froze momentarily when I saw the name. The client representative was Zhou Mian. After 10 years apart, she had now become a workplace elite. Jiang Ying cautioned, "Mr. Chun, this Zhou Mian is said to be extremely aloof and difficult to communicate with. But her capabilities are truly exceptional. She graduated from a top university, reached management within 2 years of graduation, and quickly ascended to the CEO position. After that incident, Jo Mian posted documents to clear my father's name, then returned to her former self. She quickly caught up academically within a short time, so her current achievements didn't surprise me. I thought our meeting at the wedding would be our last encounter, but now we're about to meet again unexpectedly. The meeting was arranged at a cafe. Jo Mian had clearly received prior notice and showed little surprise when seeing me. Jo Mian sat across from me, visibly agitated. She stared at me for a long while, seemingly unable to believe it was really me. After what felt like ages, she finally said, "Chen Hao, I'm so happy to see you." I reminded her, "President Zhou, we're here to discuss business matters today. Let's keep to official topics." It was my obstinacy back then. I shouldn't have clung to that accident. If not for that, those things wouldn't have happened. If you hadn't been there that time, I can't imagine what might have occurred. Jo Mian brought up past events, still appearing frightened. Had she been taken away that night, one could well imagine the dire consequences she would have faced. "It seems we can't continue our conversation today. Let's talk again when you've calmed down." I stood up and left directly. Jo Mian chased after me. After getting in the car, I ordered Jiang Ying, drive. Jiang Ying noticed Jo Mian persistently knocking on the car window outside. She got out and said, "President Zhou, please leave. Your behavior might lead to misunderstandings. Men and women should keep their distance. You know that, don't you?" Jo Mian said coldly. "What gives you, a mere assistant, the right to interfere in our affairs? Do you know what relationship I have with him? I'm the eldest daughter of the Jiang Corporation. Now, do you think this mere assistant has the right to interfere? I don't care about your past relationship. Now he's my superior. When my superior doesn't want to engage with you, this assistant must comply." Jiang Ying directly revealed her true identity. Jo Mian immediately lost her arrogance. She naturally knew the Jiang family, though their main operations were overseas. It was indeed strange to encounter Jiang Ying here, especially as my assistant. "Do you like Chen Hao? What business is that of yours? He and I were childhood sweethearts who fell in love first. I've always been in his heart. You stand no chance." "Is that so? But he doesn't want to see you now. If he truly loved you, he wouldn't have stayed abroad for 10 years. Stop deluding yourself." After throwing these words, Jiang Ying got into the car, deliberately stepping on the accelerator harder as she passed Jo Mian's side, making her inhale a lot of exhaust fumes. I heard their whole argument. Before she could ask, I volunteered. "We were indeed childhood sweethearts, but we never crossed that line," Jiang Ying affirmed. "Then she must have hurt you badly." I remained silent. The tea matter was something I truly didn't want to revisit. After that incident, Jo Mian did change. But between us, things could never return to how they were before. 10 years away have transformed this place so much. Wanting to take a walk, I suddenly realized there's nowhere for me to go. I came to the hilltop behind the school campus. It was here that I had prepared to confess to Jo Mian, before receiving that phone call that altered both our lives forever. "You really are here." I gazed out at the distant scenery when Jo Mian's voice came from behind me. Jo Mian wore a yellow maxi dress with delicate makeup, appearing elegant and mature. Had I not known her past, no one would believe she'd ever had that other side to her. I asked, "Did Director Zhou come here to discuss business matters with me?" Wearing a hurt expression, Jo Mian pleaded, "Chen Hao, please don't speak to me in that tone. It makes me feel so distant." I replied coolly, "What you wanted back then, I've already given you. We're even now. You can't pretend otherwise. I still exist in your heart. Otherwise you wouldn't have come here." Jo Mian asserted confidently, "This place indeed holds a lot of our memories, but that time has passed. You're overthinking. I'm just familiar with this place, nothing more. If Director Zhou still doesn't wish to discuss business, let's talk another time." With that, I turned to leave. Jo Mian immediately grabbed my hand. "I know you won't listen to anything I say, but truly, can't you really forgive me? I've already admitted my mistake. I just couldn't accept reality at the time. That's why I became like that." I withdrew my hand. I said I don't want to talk about that matter anymore. Jo Mian blocked my path, taking out a music box from her embrace, the very one she had smashed to pieces before. Several cracks were clearly visible on it, obviously repaired by her. "This is the gift you gave me on my birthday. See, I've kept it all along." I glanced at it. This was the custom-made music box I had specially commissioned back then. Since Jo Mian loved playing piano, the music box shape was designed like a piano, imprinted with her photo taken when she had just turned 17, radiating youthful vitality. These cracks show that no matter how you fix it, it can never be perfectly intact again. It's the same with people's hearts. Jo Mian tightly gripped my arm. "Can we go back to how we used to be? I'll behave properly from now on. I'll never be willful again. When I was young, no matter what mistakes I made, you always forgave me. Have you forgotten I'm your Mian sister?" I replied coldly, "Not all mistakes deserve forgiveness." My temper flared up uncontrollably. Had I retained even a shred of reason, I would have lashed out physically. She suddenly embraced me tightly. Don't push me away. After all these years together, my world can't exist without you. For these past 10 years you've been gone. I went crazy searching for you. I missed you so much. Zhou Mian abruptly kissed my cheek. I immediately shoved her away. Wiping the lipstick stain from my face, I said, I feel disgusted. Clenching my fists, overwhelming rage surged through me. Do you have any idea how much you hurt me back then? Because of one accident, you became obsessed with demanding my father's life in return. Have you any clue what he endured during that period? He fell into depression. Your obsession suffocated him until breathing itself became painful. Because of your obsession, you abandoned me and immediately hopped into bed with someone else. Do you have any idea what I went through? Zhou Mian was left speechless by my words. I'd held back these words for so long, finally able to voice them today. Tears welled up in Zhou Mian's eyes. I'm sorry, I truly regret it. But I still genuinely care about you. I didn't respond, leaving the place directly. Jiang Ying arranged a business gala for me. In a corner, I spotted Zhou Mian. Beside her stood a slightly overweight man wearing plain clothes. His pants even had a hole. Scars marked his arms, giving him an unsavory appearance. Upon closer look, the man resembled Song Ming. 10 years had drastically changed him. When I went abroad, he'd served a year in prison because of that incident. The school naturally expelled him, leaving his education unfinished, perpetuating his life as a delinquent. Like him, with no education to speak of, finding a job is a huge problem. Yet he could never settle down to honest work. Later, I heard he served more prison time for various crimes. Never expected to see him here, still connected to Zhou Mian. Zhou Mian handed him a card, and only then did Song Ming leave contentedly. I blended into the crowd to avoid Zhou Mian's line of sight, so she didn't notice me. Jiang Ying had been in the restroom for a while. Growing uneasy, I went to check, just in time to see Song Ming cornering her in the hallway. Song Ming spewed vulgar remarks, harassing her the same way he used to bully girls at school. Even after all his hardships, he still remembers these old tricks. I shouted, Song Ming, you're asking for death. Jiang Ying seized the chance to run over and hide behind me. You? Chen Hao. Song Ming looked shocked, clearly unprepared to see me here. With a self-deprecating laugh, Song Ming said, 10 years apart, you're still dashing as ever. Unlike me, reduced to this state. Truth be told, I didn't hate Song Ming. It wasn't like he stole Zhou Mian from me back then. Ultimately, Zhou Mian chose to debase herself. If not him, there would have been others. I chuckled, right. You're still just good at acting like a thug. That's all you'll ever amount to in this lifetime. Don't pretend to be superior W. If me. So what if you're doing better than me now? Back then you could only watch as I played with your woman. I still remember that suffocated look on your face. Those murderous eyes were so terrifying. Song Ming continued laughing. Seems you're quite the ladies' man, always having such beautiful women around. But you better keep them close. Who knows when another might end up in my bed. As he moved to leave, I suddenly kicked at him when he passed by. His body slammed against the wall, howling in pain. You dare lay hands on me? Song Ming stared at me in disbelief. I immediately pinned his head against the wall, slamming it multiple times until he collapsed writhing on the ground. What if I did hit you? The commotion quickly drew a crowd. Zhou Mian rushed over upon hearing the commotion, clearly never expecting such an incident to occur. She looked at Song Ming and ordered, Aren't you going to the hospital? Do you want to embarrass yourself further? Knowing he was in the wrong, Song Ming dared not make a scene and left reluctantly. Zhou Mian then turned to me. Don't misunderstand. I have no dealings with him. I cut her off. None of my business. No need to explain. With that, I left the place with Jiang Ying. Zhou Mian wanted to call out to me, but ultimately held her tongue. Jiang Ying hesitated to ask about my relationship with Zhou Mian, but swallowed her questions in the end. Seeming to anticipate my response, she smiled. We'll talk when you're ready to speak. Zhou Mian proposed discussing collaboration, but insisted I visit her company for negotiations. Jiang Ying muttered under her breath. Is this woman setting some kind of trap? Why agree so suddenly? Dragging this out doesn't benefit her company either. At worst, we'll just call off the partnership. You don't understand women, especially how such a proud woman like her could easily compromise. Soon we arrived at Zhou Mian's company. Zhou Mian's assistant received us. General Manager Zhou requested that only Manager Chen go upstairs. I instructed, go wait in the car. I'll finish quickly. Jiang Ying cautioned, be careful. Don't fall for any honey traps. Don't worry. When I entered, Zhou Mian had already brewed tea waiting for me. You're quite punctual for business matters, arriving so quickly. I ignored her and sat down across from her. Zhou Mian handed me the documents. I've prepared the cooperation proposal. Sign if there are no questions. Normal cooperation negotiations usually involve bargaining over benefits, but after reviewing, Zhou Mian's demands weren't excessive. It was a fair deal for both sides, which felt inconsistent with her reasonable persona. Zhou Mian suddenly asked, "You like that little assistant, don't you? I know you don't want to discuss personal matters. I just want to know if you'd still like H. Or if she became as impure as I am." She then revealed a meaningful smile. My heart sank, and I immediately pushed the door open, rushing towards the underground parking lot. From afar, I saw Jiang Ying being chased by Song Ming. She suddenly tripped and fell, instantly overtaken by Song Ming. Song Ming stripped off his clothes while walking, completely forgetting where he was. He leered and laughed. "Stop running. I told you you'd end up in my bed." Bang! I kicked him square in the back, sending him sprawling to the ground. "Are you okay?" I helped Jiang Ying up. She shook her head and stood behind me, her gaze darting around, clearly terrified by what had just happened. Only then did I turn to Song Ming. He grinned at me. "Chen Hao." I almost succeeded. I punched him in the face again, then called the police to hand him over. Jiang Ying's composure had mostly returned by now. After hesitating for a moment, I said, "Go back and wait for me first." Then I returned to Zhou Mian's office again. She was still waiting there as before, as if she knew I would return. "Looks like that trash messed things up." I slammed the table and asked angrily, "Why did you do this?" "Nothing. If I can't have it, no one else should. If she was defiled, you'd naturally stop liking her." Zhou Mian's face twisted with malice, delusionally believing that destroying Jiang Ying would break us apart. "You're a complete lunatic. I used to think you turned wicked because you lost your reason, but the truth is you were born rotten to the core. By the way, I need to reconsider our company's collaboration with yours." Having said this, I left the place. When I returned to the hotel, Jiang Ying embraced me the moment I opened the door. "Do you know, I really thought I'd never see you again." After a long pause, she finally asked, "Now, can you tell me the story between you two?" After hesitating for a long time, I finally poured out all the buried memories from deep within my heart. After hearing my story, she was stunned into silence, utterly unable to comprehend how Zhou Mian and I had missed each other in such a way. Her initial downfall seemed like mere retaliation driven by personal obsession toward you. I shook my head. I thought the same at first, until what happened today. Some people are inherently bad. Sometimes they just lack a reason to show it. I didn't want to dwell on this topic any further. Jiang Ying didn't explicitly console me either. My return here itself proved I'd moved on. She suddenly declared, "I want to date you." In truth, I'd always known her feelings. A wealthy heiress like her working as my assistant? Suspicious from the start. I'd privately heard of countless men pursuing Jiang Ying, yet she rejected them all, focusing solely on me. I saw everything she did for me, but back then, I hadn't fully let go of that past relationship. So I feigned ignorance. After saying this, her face turned red, gripping her hands tightly, afraid to hear my rejection. I looked into her eyes, then slowly leaned in for a kiss. After a long moment apart, I nodded. "Okay." Song Ming quickly implicated Zhou Mian after being arrested. From the police, I learned Song Ming had leverage over Zhou Mian, which was why she had been paying him. However, Zhou Mian occasionally needed to handle shady dealings, so she sought his help. Leverage? I guessed it must relate to that video incident. Zhou Mian had since reinvented herself. Aside from former classmates, no one knew she was once that delinquent girl. Now, with her status and position, she naturally didn't want her sordid past exposed. I thought the matter had ended there, but not long after, news of Zhou Mian resurfaced. Zhou Mian and Song Ming fell from a building simultaneously. Both were critically injured and hospitalized. Due to Zhou Mian's prominence, the news trended locally. Then came an even more bombshell report. The renowned female CEO was once a delinquent teenager in her past. This originated when Song Ming threatened Zhou Mian over that incident, demanding a large sum of money. Zhou Mian refused, leading to a physical altercation where they accidentally fell off the balcony during the struggle. Their lives were spared only because a sunshade below cushioned their fall. Song Ming became paralyzed from the waist down, a living nightmare for someone who spent his days harassing women. To retaliate against Zhou Mian, he publicly exposed the incident. Zhou Mian suffered a broken leg requiring prolonged rest, but the greater blow came when her company immediately terminated her employment. That scandal had been massive. Regardless of Zhou Mian's reasons for her past misconduct, the explicit videos were irrefutable facts that severely damaged the company's reputation, justifying her swift expulsion. Zhou Mian's company dispatched a new CEO to finalize the contract, marking the successful completion of this mission. After the incident, there was no one by Zhou Mian's hospital bed. When Jiang Ying and I arrived, she was leaning on crutches returning from the bathroom. I noticed her pants were soaked through. She probably never imagined she'd end up like this. She picked up the music box in her hands, clutching it as she giggled vacantly. For that fleeting moment, it was as if the vibrant young girl from years past had materialized before me once more. That spirited girl who used to dream about the future with me. How beautiful that moment had been. In the end, we didn't enter the room. Life offers no second chances. We can only hope